Hi guys, so are the Conservatives finally turning on Boris Johnson? Yes and no. Now when I say yes, this is in reference to Douglas Ross, who's the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. He has come out recently in an interview on Andrew Marr to suggest that if Boris Johnson has breached the Ministerial Code, he should resign. We're going to hear from him in a moment. Now Douglas Ross is saying this because he's in a bit of a difficult spot. In respect to recent events, Nicola Sturgeon was accused by members of this Conservative Party and others in Scotland of having breached the Ministerial Code. Some members of the Scottish Conservatives had demanded that she resign before an investigation had delivered its verdict. That put them in a difficult spot. She was later cleared of any breach of the Ministerial Code, and she returned to work. This, of course, put the Conservatives in a difficult spot now because Boris Johnson is being accused of breaking the Ministerial Code. So they have to jump on board and say, yes, he should resign. But you're also going to hear from another Tory who's going to engage in mental gymnastics in order to say the opposite. But let's hear what Douglas Ross had to say first.
I'm just making the point, if he is found to have broken the Ministerial Code, and I'm using my words carefully, if he is found to have broken that code, should he resign, yes or no?
Of course, I think people expect the highest standards of those in the highest office of the land, and that's why I think people are looking at the investigations that are currently ongoing and waiting for the answers to be heard.
So that's quite clear. If Boris Johnson has been found guilty of breaking the Ministerial Code, he should resign. But of course, it's important that Douglas Ross and the Conservatives have sort of put themselves into this position when it came to the First Minister of Scotland. Now, you're going to hear from James Cleverley, who's going to, as I said, engage in mental gymnastics in order to avoid answering the question on whether Boris Johnson should resign.
That today, and that is following the news that Douglas Ross, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, said if the Prime Minister has broken the Ministerial Code, he cannot continue. I mean, would you agree with that? Because, I mean, that's the general rule, isn't it? If you break the Ministerial Code, you need to resign.
Yes, the simple answer is yes. But James Cleverley cannot answer that question.
Well, the Ministerial Code is there for the guidance of the Prime Minister in appointing ministers. Now, ultimately, I'm not going to speculate as to...
What the hell are you talking about? The Ministerial Code is there in regards to the Prime Minister appointing ministers. So is James Cleverley suggesting that Boris Johnson is not bound by the Ministerial Code? Is Boris Johnson not a minister? You know, in the name it says Prime Minister. Does that mean that Boris Johnson is above the government? What the hell is he talking about?
As to what the outcome of things might be. The Prime Minister has already set out his explanation. He's answered the questions that have been put to him. I don't know any more detail than the things the Prime Minister has already said.
But that's not the question. It's not whether he, took money from someone, whether he, is obliged to do favors for someone. We're talking about the Ministerial Code here. The answer is yes. If Boris Johnson has breached the Ministerial Code, he should at least consider his position. Now, I was consistent on this because when a few weeks ago Nicola Sturgeon was being accused of breaching the Ministerial Code, I said exactly the same thing. I said she needs to consider her position, probably resign, because you set a standard.
So yeah, forgive me for interrupting, but on principle, this is a question of principles, isn't it? If he was found to have breached the Ministerial Code, he should go, shouldn't he?
Well, I think, as I say, I'm not going to speculate as to what what a future report.
But we don't care about your speculation about a future report. This is a hypothetical. If Boris Johnson has breached the Ministerial Code, should he resign? Yes or no? What he's trying to do, he started off by describing the Ministerial Code, which I don't think was accurate. And now he's talking about, I don't want to get into details about the case itself. Just put the case aside. I would ask the question, if a minister breaks if the minister or a minister breaks the ministerial code, breaches it, should they resign? We're not talking about Boris Johnson, just a hypothetical. A hypothetical, James. If a minister breaks the ministerial code, should they resign? Yes or no?
Or one of the current reports.
No, I'm not asking you to. I'm not asking you to.
Well, as I say, until we know what is in the report, it's pointless speculating about what actions might be taken.
Forgive me, but if you breach the ministerial code on anything, you would be expected to resign, wouldn't you?
It's not straightforward as that. You're trying to.
It's not as straightforward as that. It's like if you break the law, shouldn't you be punished? It's not as simple as that. Okay, maybe I break the law for good reasons. Maybe Boris Johnson is breaching the ministerial code, I don't know, to save lives. Maybe Boris Johnson, was getting money from someone to fix up his flat in order to help the poor in some way. See, we have to look at it in that way, that perspective.
You're trying to create a kind of a set of conditions, and that's not how it...
He's not creating a set of conditions, you idiot. He's simply asking, if you breach the code, should you resign? You can say, look, you should resign, but I believe that the person breaking the ministerial code was doing it for the right reasons, but they should still resign. Boris Johnson could be breaching the code to save poor children, but by breaching the code, he has to resign. Maybe he was doing something good, but the rules are the rules. The mental gymnastics here, I must keep James extremely fit.
It works. The ministerial code is to inform the Prime Minister's decisions about the appointment or the maintenance of ministers. It's not...
What are you talking about? So, once again, Boris Johnson, just explain it to us, James. So Boris Johnson is above the ministerial code. The ministerial code does not apply to Boris Johnson. Is that what you're suggesting?
It's not as simple as you set out. And as I say, it's no point in speculating. In fact, quite the opposite, in speculating about what reports might say at some point in the future.
No, it's not anything I'm setting out or trying to set out. It's what Douglas Ross, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, has said.
Fantastic. Well done, Stephen. It's not what I said. It's what you heard before from the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. The leader of the Scottish Conservatives was quite clear. He said, if a minister breaches the code, they should resign. If Boris Johnson has been found guilty of breaching the code, he should resign. Now, we don't know whether he has breached the code or not. There's nothing, nobody's asking, I'm not asking for Boris Johnson to resign now. Nobody's asking, as far as I know, nobody's asking for Boris Johnson to resign at the moment. They want an investigation to be carried out first. And if it's been determined that he has breached the code, then he should consider his position at least. If he can make some sort of justification for breaching the code, I was breaching the code to save lives, or I was trying to uplift so many people in the world. This £800 spent on wallpaper was necessary to create jobs or something. We can look at that, but he has to at least be honest here and say, James has to be honest here and say, look, yes, if somebody has breached the code, they should resign.
Yeah, and as I said, I've answered that. I've answered that point. It's the reports will come out when they come out, and the Prime Minister will make decisions based on whatever the reports say.
The Prime Minister will make decisions on whatever the reports say. So you're not going to actually demand Boris Johnson resign if he has breached the code. So what he's trying to do here is, yeah, it may turn out that Boris Johnson breached the code, but Boris Johnson is more important than the code. Or, as he said in this interview, Boris Johnson decides how ministers are elected or selected according to the code. I still don't understand what he's talking about. Perhaps you do. Let me know in the comment section, guys. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?